In 146 BCE, the Roman Senate passed a resolution that had never been passed before in the history of the ancient world. They didn't just vote to defeat their enemy. They voted to erase them. Every building torn down. Every wall demolished. Every citizen either killed or sold into slavery. The land salted so nothing would ever grow there again. And then, the name itself, struck from every record they could reach, forbidden from being spoken in official Roman discourse. Rome didn't just want to win. Rome wanted Carthage to have never existed. And it almost worked. For nearly 2,000 years, almost everything the world knew about Carthage came from Rome. From the people who destroyed them. From the historians who had every reason to make the enemy look like a monster. This is Forgotten Kingdoms, and this is the story of the civilization Rome was so afraid of. They tried to erase it from human memory. Before we get to the war, and there are 3 of them, each one more brutal than the last, you need to understand what Carthage actually was. Because the version Rome gave you is almost entirely wrong. Carthage was not a barbaric city of savages. It was not a nation of child sacrificers ruled by cruel priests. It was not the faceless evil empire that Roman writers painted it as. Carthage was one of the most sophisticated trading civilizations in the ancient world. Founded around 814 BCE on the coast of modern-day Tunisia in North Africa, by Phoenician settlers from the city of Tyre. Carthage started as a small outpost on a hill overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. Within 300 years it had become the wealthiest city on earth. Not through conquest, not through fear, through trade. The Carthaginians understood something that almost no other ancient civilization grasped as completely. That the Mediterranean Sea was not a barrier. It was a highway, and whoever controlled that highway controlled the ancient world. At its peak, Carthage controlled the entire western Mediterranean. The coast of North Africa, from modern Libya to Morocco, southern Spain, Sardinia, Corsica, western Sicily. Their merchant ships were in every port from the British Isles to West Africa. Ancient sources describe Carthaginian sailors reaching the Canary Islands. Some historians believe they reached the coast of Brazil 2,000 years before Columbus. Their harbors at Carthage itself were engineering marvels. A circular military harbor that could hold 220 warships simultaneously. Each vessel in its own dry dock, hidden behind walls so high that passing ships couldn't see inside. A commercial harbor next to it where merchant vessels loaded and unloaded the wealth of the ancient world. Purple dye from Phoenicia, silver from Spain, grain from Sicily, ivory and gold from Africa, tin from Britain. Carthage sat at the center of it all, and they had one rule that ran through everything. What happens in Carthage stays in Carthage. Their trade routes were the most jealously guarded secrets in the ancient world. Carthaginian captains carried orders that if captured by a foreign navy, they were to sink their own ships rather than reveal where they had been sailing. There are ancient accounts of Carthaginian ships deliberately leading foreign vessels onto rocks, sacrificing their own crew, so that nobody would discover the trade routes to Britain and West Africa. That is how valuable their network was. That is how hard they worked to protect it. But here is where the story gets complicated. Because Carthage was not ruled by a king. In a world of pharaohs and emperors and god-kings, Carthage had a republic. 2 elected officials called suffets served as joint heads of state, chosen by vote, serving fixed terms, answerable to a senate of wealthy citizens. Sound familiar? It should, because Rome had a republic too, and this created a problem that neither city could escape. 2 republics, two trade empires, one Mediterranean sea. There wasn't room for both of them. The collision was inevitable. The only question was when. The answer came in 264 BCE. A dispute over the island of Sicily, the most strategically valuable piece of land in the Mediterranean, brought Rome and Carthage into direct conflict for the first time. It was called the First Punic War. It lasted 23 years. 23 years of brutal naval warfare. Tens of thousands of men drowned at sea in storms. Entire fleets destroyed not by the enemy but by the weather. Both sides bled each other dry. Rome won. Carthage was forced to surrender Sicily, forced to pay a massive indemnity in silver, forced to watch Rome take Sardinia and Corsica while Carthage was distracted by a mercenary revolt. Any other civilization would have collapsed. Carthage didn't. They looked at the map, found the one place Rome hadn't reached yet, and went there, Spain, under the brilliant General Hamilcar Barca, a man so fierce his own troops gave him a nickname that meant lightning. Carthage built a new empire in the Iberian Peninsula, silver mines, loyal local tribes, a rebuilt army. Within a generation, Carthage had replaced everything Rome had taken from them, and Hamilcar Barca had a son. His name was Hannibal, and he had grown up watching Rome humiliate his father. He had made a promise. Here is what the history books give you about Hannibal. The elephants crossing the Alps, the dramatic march into Italy, a few famous battles. Here is what they leave out. Hannibal Barca was 29 years old when he launched his invasion of Rome. 29. And his plan was so bold, so completely insane, that Rome genuinely did not believe he would attempt it. In 218 BCE, Hannibal left Spain with an army of 90,000 soldiers. He marched them through southern France, through the foothills of the Alps, and then up into the mountains themselves. October in the Alps, snow already falling. Narrow mountain passes barely wide enough for a man on foot, let alone supply wagons and war elephants. Ancient sources describe soldiers falling off cliff edges into ravines, horses panicking on icy paths. The elephants, massive, terrified animals, sliding on frozen ground. Hannibal lost half his army in the crossing. He arrived in northern Italy with 26,000 men, against a Roman Republic that could field 750,000 soldiers. And he won. Not once, not twice, 3 times in a single year. He destroyed Roman armies that outnumbered him 3-1. At the Battle of Trebia, he lured the Roman consul into attacking across a freezing river at dawn. His men had been eating and resting by warm fires all morning. The Romans arrived half frozen and exhausted. Carthage annihilated them. At Lake Trasimene, he hid his entire army of 40,000 men in the fog along the lake shore. The Roman army marched into a canyon between the lake and the hills, and Hannibal closed both exits simultaneously. 15,000 Romans died in 3 hours. They had nowhere to run. And then Cannae, 216 BCE. The Battle of Cannae. 80,000 Roman soldiers against 50,000 Carthaginians. Hannibal did something that military strategists still study in war colleges today. He let his center deliberately retreat under Roman pressure, pulling the Roman army forward, while his stronger wings wrapped around both sides simultaneously. The Romans were completely encircled. In a single afternoon, 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers died. It is still one of the highest death tolls in a single day of battle in all of human history. The Roman Senate was so paralyzed with fear that they sat in silence for 2 days. 2 days. Without speaking, without a plan, without any idea what to do next, Hannibal had done what nobody believed was possible. He had broken Rome. And then he made the one mistake that changed everything. He stopped. Hannibal marched through Italy for 15 years. He won battle after battle. He never lost a major engagement on Italian soil. But he never marched on Rome itself. Historians have argued for centuries about why. He didn't have siege equipment. He was waiting for Carthage to send reinforcements that never came. He believed Rome would negotiate, rather than continue a war they were losing. Whatever the reason, he waited. And Rome recovered. Slowly, painfully, but they recovered. They stopped meeting Hannibal in open battle and started cutting off his supply lines instead. They attacked Carthage's allies in Spain. They built a new army in Africa, and they found their own general, a young Roman commander named Scipio Africanus, who had studied every battle Hannibal had ever fought and learned from all of them. In 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama in North Africa, Scipio used Hannibal's own tactics against him. The man who had never lost in Italy lost. The Second Punic War was over. Carthage surrendered again. Paid another massive indemnity. Gave up Spain. Gave up their navy. Gave up the right to go to war without Rome's permission. Carthage was finished as a military power, but it wasn't finished as a trading empire. And that, more than anything, is what finally destroyed them. Because Carthage rebuilt. Within 50 years of their second defeat, with no army, no navy, no empire, they had become wealthy again. Just through trade. Just through being better merchants than anyone else in the Mediterranean. And that drove Rome insane. A Roman senator named Cato the Elder ended every single speech he gave in the Senate, regardless of the topic, with the same 5 words. Carthage must be destroyed. Every speech, for years. Tax policy, road construction, agricultural reform. Carthage must be destroyed. In 149 BCE, Rome manufactured a pretext, accused Carthage of violating their peace treaty, and launched the Third Punic War. It wasn't a war. It was an execution. Carthage had no real army, no navy, no allies. They knew what was coming, and for 3 years, with nothing but improvised weapons made from melted-down household bronze, they held Rome off. Women cut off their own hair to make bowstrings for catapults. Citizens tore down the marble columns of their temples to build barricades. An entire city fighting with their bare hands against the most powerful military machine in the ancient world for 3 years. In 146 BCE, the walls finally broke. Roman soldiers poured into the city. The fighting went house to house, street to street, building to building. The 700,000 people of Carthage were reduced to 50,000 survivors, all sold into slavery. The city was burned for 17 days. 17 days. The fire was so intense that the ruins were still too hot to walk on weeks later. And then the Senate's order was carried out. Every building demolished to its foundations. Every wall torn down, every stone removed. The land was cursed. And according to ancient sources, though historians debate whether this is literal or symbolic, salted, so nothing would ever grow there again. And the name erased as thoroughly as they could manage. Carthage was gone. Here is what Rome spent the next 2,000 years telling the world about Carthage. that they sacrificed children to their gods, that their religion was barbaric, that their culture was inferior, that they deserved what happened to them. Modern archaeology tells a very different story. Excavations at Carthage in the 20th century found one of the most sophisticated urban planning systems in the ancient world. Multi-story apartment buildings, a sewer network, public baths, libraries. The child sacrifice claims, which come entirely from Greek and Roman sources, are now seriously disputed by archaeologists who have excavated the sites Romans pointed to as evidence. What they found was a cemetery for infants who died of natural causes, not a sacrificial site. Carthage wrote their own history, in their own language, on their own terms. Rome burned all of it. What survived was written by the people who wanted them dead. Imagine if the only history of your civilization was written by the army that burned your city to the ground. That is what happened to Carthage. Here is what I want you to carry with you. Carthage built the ancient world's greatest trading empire. They sailed to Britain, to West Africa, possibly to the Americas. They created a republic centuries before Rome made theirs famous. They produced in Hannibal one of the greatest military minds in human history. And Rome was so threatened by them, so completely terrified of what Carthage represented, that they didn't just defeat them. They tried to delete them from history. They almost succeeded. But we remember. That is why this channel exists. If this story shook you, subscribe to Forgotten Kingdoms. Because next week we go to an empire that built cities so advanced that modern archaeologists still cannot explain their water systems. An empire of 2 million people that vanished so completely. We don't even know what language they spoke. The Indus Valley Civilization. I'll see you there.